Hello students, welcome back. Mr. Labour here. Okay, so in this video we're going to start learning to do some coding and what we're going to do is we're going to be learning that with a language called VBA, which is Visual Basics for Applications, and that's what Microsoft use and allows us to use behind the programs like Excel, Microsoft Access and Microsoft Word. So we're going to start off with, we're going to do it in Excel, so we'll open up Excel and get started. So there we go, there's Excel. Okay, so just choose a blank workbook there, and this is what you should have showing. Now, we're just going to have to make a few changes to get ourselves into VBA. So go File, Options, click on Customize Ribbon, and then down on the right hand side you'll see the developer here is probably not checked for you. So just check that and then go OK. And what that does is it gives us this extra tab that you'll see up here. So with this tab, we'll just click on the tab here, and we've got two ways of getting to the code. And quite honestly, I don't know why they have two buttons, but they seem to do exactly the same thing. So either click View Code or Visual Basic, and you'll end up with this. Okay, so this is good, and we've still got Excel open in the background, and what this is you can see it says Visual Basics for Applications, and this is our code window which is sitting behind Excel. Okay, so what we will do now is we'll go back to Excel, and then there's a button here which says Insert, so click on that, and then at the bottom it says ActiveX Controls, and the first option there, if you hover over it, it will say Command button. So I want you to click on that, and then just draw anywhere on your screen here on the worksheet a square which will give us a button. Okay, now to write our very first piece of code is actually very simple. All we need to do, actually before I do that, I just need to make sure that you have got this design mode button pushed down, because if I actually I'm going to let it come up, and when it comes up you will see it allows us to push the button like that, and that's what we call run mode, and we'll be using that very soon. Okay, so before we do that, just click on the design mode, and then when I click the button, you'll see it becomes selected with the handles around it, allowing us to resize it. But what I want you to do is double click this button, and when you double click the button we go back into this Visual Basic for Applications back end, and you've actually written your first line or couple of lines of code, and there they are. Now you probably don't know what that means, but very simply I'm just going to add a line at the beginning and tell you what this line of code means. Okay, so what it means is, very simply, it means when I click the button. Okay, and that's what the first line of code, okay, right. We just need to do another little change. Can you click on Tools and then go Options, and then untick this option where it says Auto Syntax Check. Okay, so I'm going to uncheck that. Okay, right, so you should have this. This first line of code that was written when we double click the button means when I click the button. And what will happen is anything that we write in between here and down here, which we're going to write some code in here soon, is going to actually happen. Okay, so what happens is when I click the button, run the code that's in here. Okay, and then when it gets down to here, then you stop running the code. Okay, now up here we've written something which is going to confuse the computer, and we just need to stop it confusing the computer by turning it into what we call a comment. And to do that, we're going to use a single quote, which is right beside your enter button on your keyboard. And then when I get on to the next line, you'll see that this turns green. And what that means is that anything after that single quote, the computer won't read it. Okay, so it's a really good way of just putting comments in there that mean something to us, but not the computer. Okay, right, so that's all good. We need to get it to do something. So, what I'm going to do now, okay, but before we write any code, I just need to explain to you something that you need to understand before we can go any further. Okay, so when we write things, when we type things out here, there's going to be certain words that the computer's going to understand. Like, it understands the word private, it understands the word sub, and it understands this long word here. Okay, it understands the word sub, end. Okay, but there's sometimes that there are some words that the computer won't understand, and those words are called strings. Okay, and we'll just put a single quote in front of that because we don't want the computer to understand that. Okay, now strings are messages that we will be giving to the user, or maybe we are using them somewhere else. Okay, so if we were to write our name, I'm going to write my name, Mr. Laver. Now, the computer is not going to understand what that is. So what we need to do is we need to put double quotes around it, like that. Okay? And when we put double quotes around it, then the computer just understands it as being a string. Okay? And it won't actually send a command to the computer. Okay, right, so now you know what a string is. I'm just going to put that string there on this line because that line is all commented out with that single quote. Okay, now we're going to write our first command to the computer, and it's going to be a very simple one. It's going to be msgbox, and what that actually means, what that actually is it's going to tell the computer to pop up a message box for the user. Okay, and in that message box we want to put something in that message box. So you'll see, so the way we do it is we use an open round bracket, and that's above the 9 on your keyboard, and then we close that bracket like that. Now inside those brackets we're going to put a string, and so we need the double quotes, and then we're going to say hello world. Okay, now the reason I've done that hello world is because whenever you start writing, becoming a programmer, it's traditionally the first thing that you write. So there we go. So let's see what happens, and without any further explanation. So we'll go back to Excel. Make sure that this design mode is unticked. So we're now actually in run mode, and when we click the button, you can see now we've got this message box here that has popped up. Okay, and that's what that msgbox did. And on the message box we've got a button that's just standard, you don't need to do anything, but it says hello world, and that is what we sent to message box in order to put a message for the user up. Okay, so there we go. So let's go back to our Visual Basic for applications, and you can see now you know how to give a message to the user. You use this message box keyword that the computer understands. You need to have the round bracket at both ends. Then the message that we're actually giving to the user must be put inside the double quotes because it is a string and the computer doesn't understand what hello world means. Okay, it understands these are what we call keywords. These are keywords that the computer understands and knows what to do with, but strings it doesn't understand. Okay, but it can use strings, and we're going to see an example of that next up. So I'm going to now just comment out that line so that we're not using that line again. And the next thing I want to show you is, I'm going to go back to Excel, is that we can use Visual Basic for applications, VBA, for reading things that are on our worksheet here. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So we need to write something in here. So I'm going to put hello, whoops, didn't spell it correctly. I'm going to put hello Mr. Labour, okay? And I'll just expand this out so that it doesn't, so that it's very obvious. Now, so what I've done is I've written that it's actually a string, and I've written that in cell A1, okay? Now to get back to your, an easy way to get back to your code is we'll put it into design mode, and if we just double click the button it takes us straight back to this code. So that's a good little trick. Right, so you can see over here that we've got this string which is in cell A1, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how we can get that information out of here and use it. So we'll use message box because that's a nice simple thing. And what I'm going to do now is inside here we're going to write range. Range is like asking for a cell, okay? And then we're going to put double quotes again, and I'm going to send range a string, so it's got to be within the double quotes, and I'm going to send it A1. In other words, I want to get out of the cell A1, okay? Now, this may be a little bit confusing for you at the moment, but we'll just put dot value, okay? And that will now show, that message box will now go and get the value out of cell A1, and it will pop it up on the screen for us. So let's see it working. Okay, go out of design mode and click the button, and it now says hello Mr. Labour. And actually, if we change that, so let's say hello student, okay? And now when I click the button, it says hello student. So, okay, so you can see now, we'll go back to design mode, double click the button, and we go straight to our code. You can see now how that actually got out the value of the of what was in that cell. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy that, and I'm now going to actually what we need to do is let's write a comment in here. We'll add a couple of lines, and I'm just going to get how to get the value of a cell. Okay, so there you are. That is how we get the value of a cell. We use that. Okay, now I'm also just going to comment that out because the next thing I want to teach you is about variables. Now hopefully, whoops, we can spell it correctly. Now hopefully you know what a variable is. Okay. I'm going to tell you now that a variable is like a box where you can put things into that box and it will keep them for you, and then we can later use them. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable. Now all variables need to have a name, so I'm just going to call it number 1. And to put things into that variable, we're going to use the word equals. And so we need to get it. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that range, whatever is in that cell. Okay? And that's going to go into number 1. And actually, while we're doing this, let's copy that and get a number 2 out too, because there's something else I want to show you. So I've copied and pasted that, and we'll call it variable number 2, and we're going to get that out of cell A2. Okay? Now, I was thinking, okay, right. So that's good. So I'm going to show you how this works, and I'm also going to show you something else. Yep. Okay. Right. So let's go back to Excel. And first of all, hello student is not a very good thing to put in there. Let's put in a number like 60 in there, and we'll put 40 into that one. Okay. Now when I click it, I take it out of design mode and I click it, and you'll see nothing happens, but it's actually worked. Now I need to show you that it has worked. So we're going to learn something else here, and that is how to debug. Okay, and it's you'll use this a lot when your code gets more confusing. So let's go back to VBA, and I want you to click right inside this gutter, this grey area here, on this first line here. And when you click there, you'll see that you get this. It highlights all of this. And what this actually does is it stops the code when it gets to this line. So let's run the code and you'll see what I mean. So click the button, make sure that you're in run mode. So I click the button, and you can see now that the code has stopped there. And the code is where the yellow is. Now the good thing about this is that when we hover over these variables, you're able to see what's in the variable. And at the moment, in number 1, the variable is empty. Okay? Now if I push F8 on my keyboard, it now goes down to the next line. So what's happened is it's actually now, it has run this line of code. And now when you hover over this variable, whoops, there we go, you'll see that inside this variable, which like I said is like a box, is the number 60. Okay? And of course that came from here. Okay? Now inside number 2, it's empty because we haven't yet run this line of code. So we're going to run it now, pushing F8 on the keyboard, and the code is down to here now, and number 2 has got 40 in it. Okay, so that's all good. Now we could either push F8 now and the code will keep running, or I can push this button up here which will stop the code from running. So I'm going to push this button because I want you to learn that. So I've now stopped the code from running, and when we stop the code from running, you'll see that hovering over these variables, there is nothing in it. Right, so we're going to now add another line, and I'm going to create another variable which I'm going to call total. And the total is what we're going to do is we're going to add number 1 plus number 2. Okay? And so when we run this line of code, the total should be 100. And well, yes, okay, so that's good. And then let's show the user with a message box what the total is. Okay, right, so let's run that and see if it works. So click the button. Because we've got this break line here, the code is stopped here. Number 1 is empty. I push F8 on my keyboard. Number 1 is now 60. Number 2 is empty. I push F8 on my keyboard. Whoops, and number 2 is now 40. I actually pushed F8 twice. You can see number 1 is here, is still 60. Number 2 is 40. And because I pushed F8 twice accidentally, it's added the total up to be here, okay? And it's going to run this line here, where the message box will pop up on the screen, and inside the message box will be total. So I'll push F8, and there we go, there's our total, okay? So that's all good. Right, so we're going to now and then I can just push F8 again and the code is finished. So we're going to now, what we're going to do now is I've shown you how to get values out of these cells. What I'm going to show you now is how to put a value into these cells, and that's really quite easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this total value and we're going to put it in the cell A3. And it's very simple. All we do is use exactly what we've got up here. So I'm going to copy that, Control C on my keyboard. I'm going to comment out this line because I don't want the message box to show. Add another line in, and I'm going to paste it down here. We'll need to change that from A2 to A3. And this time we push equals total. Okay, so I'll just show you quickly what's happened. Is out of cell A1 we used the equals to put the value across from the right hand side to the left here, and we did the same here. We used the equals to transfer the value from the right hand side to the left hand side, and we've done the same here with equals. It always equals always transfers from the right hand side to the left hand side. It's like reading a sentence backwards, and we've done exactly the same here, but this time we've put the total on this side and we've used the equals to transfer to the left hand side, and the left hand side is cell A3. Okay, so I'm going to run that. I'm going to show you one more thing, and I think that will be the finish of this video. So okay, so we click the button, we'll push F8, and number 1 is 60, F8, number 2 is 40, and total is empty. Push F8, total is now 100, total down here is 100, and when I push F8 again, you will see that it appeared over there, and then yeah, and then that's cool. Okay, so F8 again to finish it. Right, I'm now going to take that, I'm going to click on this breakpoint here and remove that. I'm going to now delete this, and when I click the button this time, it runs instantly, and you can see that's added up there. If we change this to say 500, click the button, the answer is 540, 55, and 555. Okay, right. So one more thing is this command button 1 makes no sense at all. We need to change that. So I'm going to go into design mode. I'm looking for the properties. Wait a sec. Now we're in design mode. I can select this button. I'm just going to drag it over here. I'm going to click on properties, and then this will pop up. And in the caption property here, we're going to not write command 1, we're going to put add the numbers. Okay, and that makes a lot more sense. Okay, so when I just push tab, we go to the next, we go out of it, and that's all good. I'm going to click that cross there, go to run mode, and then that's making a lot more sense now. Naming and having the messages that show to the user, like the correct labels on the buttons, means the user understands what's happening, so that's really important. Okay, right, before we finish this video, there's just I just need to show you guys how to save your file, because there is a special way, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of an activity to do to practice what we've already learned. So go File, Save, choose where you're going to save it. Okay, I'm saving in my documents. Give it a name. We'll call it VBA Introduction. And this is the important part. Where it says save as type, you need to choose macro enabled. If you don't choose macro enabled, then that code that we've just written will disappear. So make sure you choose macro enabled and then save. Okay, now I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an exercise to do. So I'm just going to remove this button down here underneath those cells there, which hopefully will make more sense. I'll just make that column a little bit wider. There we go. Right, so what I want you to do, you guys, is we've done adding the numbers here. What I want you to do is put another button in here. We'll use the C columns, and I'm just going to put a number in there and another number there, and I want you guys, so that when you press the button here, we end up with this number, this number here minus this number equals this number. So this is going to be a negative. I need to write that down somewhere. So what I'll do is I will just pull these down a little bit, and actually we'll organize this here too. So this is addition. This one here is going to be subtraction. So put another button at the bottom here, subtract these two numbers to give you an answer there. And we'll do this one here, multiplication. So we're going to do in column E, there's going to be multiplication. So we'll have a couple of numbers there for you guys to multiply out, with another button down there. And just so that you make sure that you've got it completely correct, we will do a combination here, where, no, yes we will. What we'll do is you will go, you will add these numbers, okay, so that, and I'm going to put a plus in there, which I'll align to the right. Okay, so you're going to add those, that'll give you an answer there, and then you will multiply this out. Now I need to tell you that the multiplication symbol is the star on the number pad, so you're going to multiply that out with that number there. and that will give you your answer down there. Okay, so your answer is going to be in there. Right, well, I hope that makes sense. We've got that number plus that number with an answer there, times that number to give an answer there. And give yourself another button at the bottom to click that. So if you guys do all of that and then save that and hand it in to me, then we can move on to the next stage. Okay, well, we'll see you guys in the next video. All the best.